between Asia. I'm not going to bore you. We'll go through to the next. What we do see is the decoupling mentioned earlier, that we saw decoupling on oil commodities versus natural gas. We don't think it was all strictly the economics. We think that the alternative non-conventional shale gas was a major impact when you look at the United States being a major consumer of natural gas. The net impact of just a short period of time, 2 to 3 years, that shale had to the U.S. market is immense. What will happen if they take that same technology to Europe, to China, and you start breaking that same volume out? We think that that will change, and that may decouple the oil and gas parity for a little bit longer. We do still see that oil price will increase. That is a fixed commodity, and that's important for us. We have a high liquids-based natural gas, condensate, LPGs, and that underpins the economics for our activities. Next. Just to re-emphasize, it's not just a U.S. impact. It's impact to UK pricing, and it does impact the overall pricing for gas, because it does trickle down all the way through to Japan and the major LNG and nat gas buyers throughout the world. But we see that in Papua New Guinea, that the high-quality projects with liquids will rise to the surface versus some of the non-conventional LNG projects, as the coal bed methanes and some of the others take their fair share of the market. Next. Energy risks. I've worked all over the world, from Russia, Africa, Middle East. Those are now compounded today. We used to have supply risks that people manipulate, amplify those risks, and those images stay in people's minds. Not all of them are truly real, some of them are. I know that Putin did confirm that energy would be maybe used as strategic issues and weapons. And it's all going to impact diversity of supply. And I think it's something that everybody wants to diversify and move to a few more areas, whether it's alternative, non-conventional gas, and else. So when we go into energy and financial security, the financial security and the impact is different than we all looked at 5 years ago. And we have to look at that in balance. Do the utilities in Japan, that hospitals are 100% dependent on LNG, want to be reliant on one or two sources? No, they have to have a diversity of supply. They don't have the luxury of taking coal or other supplies into an area. They don't have port facilities. They don't have the logistics. So we do have to look at the overall global economics and how can everybody fill their little part. So we saw the shale plays, natural gas, will go and take an advantage. They're lower cost, and they will take that short-term and mid-term slice out of part of the market. But the demand in Asia is soaring, and the demand in those projects, Indonesia and elsewhere, are going up. We do see supply and price risks have increased and will probably amplify over the near term. With oil prices decoupling, that will amplify that. It'll tend to shift more into natural gas. Next. How we try to address it on the local front. We saw that the gas hydrocarbons was one of the most prominent assets, and there was a proposal to take the gas down to a neighboring country for 25 cents. That's per MMBTU. That, at the same time, the gas prices in Japan were $6.50. That's more than exploitation. That's trying to take advantage of a country that had a fiscal crisis during the Asian crisis and only had $140 million in treasury. And we came up with 35% of the cash on a project, doubled the currency when it was in a tailspin. And we're a small company. We're a minnow and a world of sharks in the big energy league. So, next. We operate 4 million acres onshore, and we've taken that exploration. We've got the largest discoveries in the country just by hard work in a unique rough environment. We think that's a unique accomplishment, and now we're there to monetize that asset going forward. Next. That's a picture of, it's the largest flowing gas well in the world on a vertical well, and it was abandoned by majors, the area, and there's a lot of different direct and indirect manipulation. We saw that the potential was there, stuck to our guns, and now we have an asset that the government has a 22.5% stake in, and the economics can propel the GDP by over 100 to 400%. Next. Another picture of the well. It's just that one is enough feed to feed one train of LNG, to put it in perspective. When you look at non-conventional fields, they're looking at 4,000 to 5,000 wells for one LNG plant. So we bring with that natural efficiencies on F&D, and all of that propels better economics. That's better profitability, and it helps pull a sovereign nation out of economic despair in these rough times. Next. Just a cross-section of a conventional gas structure. We drilled from the left all the way, and we're currently drilling the Antelope 2 well on the far left. Next. That's the seismic image of what we looked at when conventional majors said it wasn't true. Nothing could be that thick. They've never seen it before in 50 years. And we had to raise capital in light of all those big super majors out there, and it wasn't, it's vindictive to have a nice success. Thank you. Next. The gas volumes, as of December, we are just at the point that on a certified base, we had enough for a first train of LNG going through. Next. Then third-party estimate, we're not yet certified, but just after the last well, we're around 6 T's of gas. So we exceeded the first train threshold, moving on to the second train. Next. Well, how do you get it financed? We're a small company. So you have to look at what people have done. You look at the intrinsic value of what's in the gas. We're rich in LPGs, low in CO2, low in H2S, and we have associated oil. So the conventional school of thought is you develop the early liquids, monetize that, and that decreases the, let's say, financial arbitrage that sovereign countries get involved in by more stronger partners. And we can pull ourselves, a small company, and the state as a partner into a stronger cash flow and get project financing out of a cash flow stream versus negative leverage. So we're looking at the early condensate over the next 2 years to get it stripped, and that will fund the equity components of our project. Next. The project itself, our objectives, to deliver high-quality LNG from Papua New Guinea and the region, whether that's China, Japan, Korea. The normal transportation arbitrage, they would much rather have an LNG supply 7 days to 8 days away than 54 days, deadheading back all the way to the Middle East with empty freight. You have boil off that's 2%, taking LNG cargoes from the PG all the way to North Asia. So strategically, we think proximity, we have that advantage. We have a quality advantage. All of those gets us a leg on competition. For Papua New Guinea, they look at it and they have their long-term energy security of supply. Why? Because they've asked for a domestic market obligation, and we're the only company that said fine. Their local demand, even if it's 400%, you can barely read it on the gauges. 20 million scuffs out of 1.6 billion a day. So for us, it's the right thing to do. Plus, they own 22.5% of the gas supply. But other participants in the country wouldn't even allow them to go through their own pipeline. So you got to look at it, and we try to be a balanced partner. The lower carbon initiatives led by the Prime Minister, we know that we achieve that, creates financial stability and a base energy needs that are naturally hedged. And that's caused a lot of trouble throughout the world. And they're in the unique position that they'll have a naturally hedged position for 30 to 40 years. Very nice for a sovereign country. Direct ownership in the clean resource and local employment.